In this final step, we will go ahead and add our JavaScript, and we will talk about some of the settings for the slider. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of our code, and I'll get our function. And let's go back, and I'll just move my JS over a little bit so it's a little easier to see the code. All right, and now you'll be able to see the function, and you'll see where we use our class lazy, which is the first class in our section, which holds the divs, which hold the content for our slider. Okay, and you will see that we have lazy load on demand. And again, this is going to load the content for each of the slides as the slide becomes available. And if you wanted to load all of the slides at one time when the page loads, then you could change on demand to progressive. And you'll see that you have control of this. You can add as many of these settings or as few of these settings as you want. So in this example, we can set the speed of our slider. Do we want to see the dots or those pagination dots underneath a slider, which are typical of allowing you to jump to a particular slide and not have to see them in sequence? We can dictate how many slides at a time we see, and we can also look at slides to scroll. Do we want to see the arrows? In this case, center mode is true, which means the slide in the center will be seen, and then auto play is set to true. So let's just go ahead and see what we have here. And before, I'm just going to take a quick look, and we'll see that we are setting will scale slider. We're just setting a top, a left, we're setting a width, a height, and a border. I'm going to go ahead and change my width to 600 pixels, and I'm going to leave the border on for this and the section so you can just see what's happening here. So let's go ahead and save. Let's update our preview, and we will see our slider. So you can see the red. If we go back real quick here, the red should be, I might have to scroll down a little bit. So the blue will be the parent, which is holding the entire slider. And then section is set to red. Okay, so section is the slider itself. All right, so if we go back and take a look, you'll see red is the slider itself, and then the blue is our outer parent, and you'll see that's where we also see these pagination dots. All right, so you should be able to cycle through your slides. You can see as many slides as you want or as few. We've set this to autoplay until I clicked it. And then you'll see that our focus is on the center slide. So if we were to go back, and let's take autoplay away. So I'll just comment out autoplay. We'll take off center mode. Now, because I've commented these out, you notice that each of the styles, each of the settings has a comma after it except for the very last one. So now that arrows is the last one, we can go ahead and remove. And then save, and we'll update our page. And now the focus should be on the slide on the left-hand side, and you only see 3 slides at a time. Don't worry that these dots, that's just sort of a little bug that as the page uploads, then all of the dots will show up. I've just noticed that it does that sometimes. But as this reloads, then everything should be fine. They should show up. Okay? All right, so let's now just go back to Slick and just make a note that you should go through and explore the different setups for these sliders which are available. So if you wanted slides that were of a variable width, then you could do so. You just need to add the variable width true setting. Okay. Now, my guess is here it's probably best to keep the heights of all of the images the same if you're using the variable width, but this is something you might want to explore. Now, you could work with adaptive height. Adaptive height will allow you to have content of different heights, but a caveat here, I believe, is you have to set the slideshow to 1 for this to work correctly. So, as an example, let's do this. Let's go ahead and set our arrows to true. We'll add a comma. We'll go adaptive height, and we'll set true, no comma, and then we're going to set slides to scroll. We could probably comment this one out, and then slides to show. I believe this, I'm going to leave this at 3, but we should set this to 1, but I'm going to leave this at 3. And now over in our HTML, on maybe our second image, our second div, after our image element, let's go ahead and add an H1, and we'll just type in MAX GRUNDY, and then we'll close our H1 and we will save. Let's go ahead and do a preview. And what you're going to see is we're going to see Max's name, but you're also going to see space underneath each of the images, okay, each of the sliders. So in this case, you have to set slideshow to 1. So we only see one slide at a time. And then we'll go ahead and save. And we'll update. So now we'll see one slide at a time. And when we go to the slide that has additional content, you'll see that things move up and down. Okay, they'll adapt to these different heights. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that things move around very slightly. Okay. All right. So actually, now that I'm looking at it, I'm not seeing that change here in Codepen. Let me stop here and just take a second to take a look at this. All right. So I'm going to go back. Let's go back again, and this is one of those cases where I should have paid attention. There was a little exclamation point that showed up, let me know that I spelt something wrong. I had an extra D in adaptive here. So let's see if that in fact fixed things. So I'm going to go ahead and save, and we'll go back to our preview page. Okay, I'm going to reload this page. It's doing something a little funky here. All right, so I came back into the code just to make sure I have adaptive height spelt correctly. I have my commas correct. I'm not seeing any errors, and I'm thinking what's happening is this. So let's go ahead and save. And let's go to our demo, and this keeps getting messed up. And what I'm wondering is, I'm just going to cycle through my slides. Okay, I'm just going to keep cycling through these. And then we're back to the beginning. And I'm thinking that the something was being stored. And now there is our adaptive working correctly. So the only really thing I had wrong was an extra D. But what happened is, because I spelt that wrong, the slides kind of went into this, I don't know, they stored some data, they collapsed on themselves, But as soon as I cycled through all of the slides and got back to the beginning and the slider reloaded itself, okay, because it might have been because of the on-demand, I don't know, but it's reloaded itself and now it is working correctly with the adaptive height. So sorry to take you down a bad path, but at the least we went through and debugged, and if that happens to you, you know to just cycle through your slides and see if they'll reload correctly if some error like that happens. All right, so with that being said, again, I encourage you to go back to the Slick Slider site and go through and look at the different sliders, and then know that depending on how you want the slider to work or behave, that you need to add the different settings inside of your function.